You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman. A new exhibit in Tacoma shows the history and traditions of Native people, not just as relics of the past, but as they remain evolving today. Soundside producer Maliha Syed brings us the story.
When you visit the Washington State History Museum in Tacoma, you'll see a red circular structure with a 4-letter phrase written across the top. This is Native Land. It's the name of the museum's permanent exhibit that opened in October. The phrase is a reminder that you've probably seen many times, but don't be lulled into thinking you'll know what to expect. It's been given a new lens.
But what I wanted to do is let people know, like, at the moment they walked in, that this is not going to be like a bunch of beaded moccasins and, like, it's going to be very different.
That's Todd Clark. He's an enrolled member of the Wailaki tribe and the tribal liaison for the Washington State Historical Society. He's also the co-curator of This Is Native Land. Todd says he wanted to challenge the typical portrayals of Native Americans that he saw in other museums.
Typically, most museums have kind of a settler perspective on history, and often what you'll find is a Native American gallery kind of off to the side somewhere, and it'll show like beadwork and kind of like vaguely talk about culture, art and culture of the tribes, but not really include them in the overall conversation of particularly how the state was created or anything of more substance. And I wanted to change that.
One way the exhibit does that is by not overly focusing on the past. There's a lot of contemporary Native American art on display. One of the first things you'll see when you walk in is a gold-beaded beanie baby bear. It has human hair and sits alone in a glass display. The artist behind it is Allison Bremner, who's Tlingit. Her artwork is a commentary on how museums have taken sacred items from Tlingit people.
And comparing that to collecting beanie babies and how beanie babies were no longer available to the children that they were made for because they became collector's items. And it's kind of the story of that. So right out of the gate, we're just saying, like, look, we kind of understand like the idea of museums and collecting and all that stuff and acknowledging that.
It took a while to figure out exactly how the exhibit would take shape. To accomplish it, Todd collaborated with co-curator Danica.
I'm Danica Sterud Miller. I'm a citizen of the Puyallup Nation, and I'm also Associate Professor of American Indian Studies at the University of Washington, Tacoma.
Danica and Todd leaned on more than 100 Native contributors from over 60 tribes to inform the exhibit. They also took into account what community members said they did and didn't want. Danica said that one big takeaway was that people didn't just want to see the art on display. It had to be more tactile.
A lot of our elders told us they didn't want artifacts in glass cases. And when you walk through, you'll see that there's a lot you can touch. So, for example, we had a lot of baskets made and telling the maker that they would be for people to touch.
To be clear, there are still some things that you can't touch, like the big powwow drum that's strategically placed out of reach.
I just couldn't do that to the poor museum staff.
You don't want 100 fourth graders in here with that available for pounding on.
Banging away. There are, of course, things with such historical significance they couldn't be left out. But even there, the curators take a different approach. Take, for instance, the way they incorporate treaties into the exhibit.
Many of my students, Native students, had never read their treaties. They didn't know how to access their treaties. And it's really important that we understand that treaties are tangible documents with real consequences, histories, things that our elders and ancestors have fought very, very hard for.
In one section, the treaties have been digitized to make them easier to read.
And now you can sit at a chair and look at that document that clarifies and contextualizes your tribe's relationship as a government sovereign nation.
These treaties played a big role in Indigenous history, and Todd wanted to make sure that they didn't get overlooked. So as you walk through This Is Native Land, you'll pass some documents that have been blown up into massive displays.
I don't want people to be able to just like kind of ignore the treaties or just like kind of brush it off, and like what can we do to like really like visually impact people so they can't really do that. And then we finally came up with this idea of like they're giant, they're like 12 feet tall.
Throughout the exhibit, the curators strike a balance, aiming to highlight the painful experiences that Indigenous people endured without completely overwhelming audiences, because visitors will confront some heavy themes, like a replica of child-sized handcuffs enclosed in a glass case. It's a reference to when the federal government forcibly separated Indigenous children from their families and sent them to boarding schools to assimilate.
It's hard not to look at this and to really feel, exactly what our children went through when you see this.
Still, the curators wanted to be mindful of how they were presenting these histories. The exhibit is designed in a way that puts some of the more distressing material a little out of the way so people can opt into learning about these events instead of being forced to face them.
We had a lot of discussions about how do you deal with that trauma and stuff and not romanticize it or make it this big deal. So it was a compromise to try and figure out how we go about physically sharing that information.
There's also joy on display in This Is Native Land, and it's shown in a way that blends the past and the present. Like in the center of the exhibit, where an adult and child-sized mannequin wear traditional regalia. The child's mannequin, though, includes a recognizable face, Hello Kitty, who's printed on the clothing and beaded into hair pieces.
This is also a piece that so many Native women have come to me and said, this is exactly what me and my daughters wear to powwow. This perfectly encapsulates sort of the traditional regalia of today.
You get a real sense of everydayness as you walk through the exhibit. That's maybe most notable when you peek into the model kitchen, where you can lift vessels and get whiffs of traditional tribal medicines like huckleberry, sweetgrass, and sage. On the stove, you'll see a cast iron skillet with a replica fry bread, and everything is vibrantly colored. The countertops are a shade of plum, and orange slices are printed on the wallpaper.
This is kind of what my kitchen looks like. This is much cleaner, probably. But
it's that sense of normalcy that really makes This Is Native Land stand out. The exhibit doesn't just keep these communities and their stories preserved in the past. Instead, it brings audiences into the present-day lives of Indigenous communities here in Washington, which is still Native land. I'm Maliha Sayed.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. Don't forget you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org or on your favorite podcast app.